Well, good morning, everyone.
Good
Whoa,
morning.
good morning.
How you going?
Morning,
everyone.
It's so satisfying when we start well. It's so nice when there's no technical issues. But good morning and welcome to level 3, everyone.
Yeah, welcome. Happy Tuesday.
Good to be here. Very good. Happy Tuesday.
Boy, oh boy, do we have a fantastic guest for you this morning? We were just chatting with our guest today just before the show began. You're in for a treat. Like, it's going to be so good.
Oh, it's going to be so good.
So good. But let's find out about how you guys are doing. How was your long weekend, Mon, Rob? How was Anzac weekend for you guys?
Amazing. Yeah, it was just amazing to go for a walk in the neighborhood and all the houses. I don't know, Rob, because we live in the same neighborhood. Did you notice all the poppies? And I was just even taking a picture of some, like the way people decorated their front yards. It was very American, but very patriotic. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And how it made the news, the bagpiper on Mount Maunganui Beach at the Mount. And I was just like, oh my gosh, tears in my eyes.
We had a bagpiper in this area.
Yeah.
I could hear one. And I went out and stood on my driveway at 6 a.m. on Saturday. And our whole neighborhood here, I could see this dotted all the way down our whole street. And I was just like, it was quite moving, actually. I was sitting there thinking, I'm going to be out here by myself getting cold. But literally everyone in our street came out. It was fantastic.
It was incredible.
In the sunny weather.
Yeah, it was incredible seeing like just social media and stuff like that just be covered in people who are up at dawn, standing at dawn. So we, of course, we've got a 7-month-old, so we were up at dawn, but for a completely different reason. And then we had someone near our, I don't know which house it was playing The Last Stand via the radio as part of the broadcast kind of thing. And so we kind of, it was this surreal situation. We were half asleep because of child, and then we start hearing the last stand, and it was incredible. It was probably the one more poignant Anzac Day memorial things I've been part of in a long time, in terms of seeing the take up across the country and seeing people actually be invested in part of it, which I think is huge. I think is incredibly significant.
Oh, 100%. And even the sunrise in the bay, how beautiful, apropos it was.
Pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Well, let us know in the comment section how your long weekend was. We've got some great comments coming through already. Georgia Ellison, number one commenter, once more out the gate on Tuesday morning. Good morning, miss you guys. Hope you had a nice long weekend.
Yeah, good morning.
Is saying good morning. Missed you guys yesterday. Tina, we were just talking before the show started. We were just wondering how you and Darren are going. How soon?
How far was that baby? Come on.
How far away is that baby? If you want to let us know, if you don't, that's fine too. Jamie Delbert, looks like she missed us over the weekend. They're back. We are back.
Yeah.
Good to be back.
We will be keeping it going during level 3. So don't worry. So you got at least 2 more weeks of us, and then we'll reassess again when the government decides to reassess everything. Michaela Gary says, nice to see you. Emily Wanhole says, good morning.
Good
Graham
morning.
Randall, people. Happy Tuesday, wonderful team from the Randalls.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah,
cool.
Happy Tuesday.
Lorena and Hannah in Arlington are saying, good motto, popping our bubbles will be such sweet sorrow. But on that, I was telling the guys before we got started today, I am amazed by how busy my road has been since I woke up this morning. It's incredible. We're down in Papamoa, and we're on Papamoa Beach Road, which is a significant road in the area, and it's just been a buzz of activity. We kind of think everybody's just going down the road to get McDonald's because it's opening again.
Lining up.
I saw that on social media.
But also, just who knows? Who knows?
Exactly.
Tina Porter's chimed in saying that I'm still fat. Haha, 2 weeks to go.
2 weeks to go.
2 weeks to go. So there you go. So
you're in the zone, though.
You're in the zone. You're in the zone. Game on.
Could be any day. Yeah.
But it is amazing. I don't know what that was, but we'll carry on. I don't know if you heard it. It's like it kind of fell over in the background of my house. It's fine.
Nice. It's all good.
Level 3. I want to know what it means to some people as well. So if you're obviously, we heard on Friday there are a number of people who have to go back to work today, so they won't be listening right now. But so if you're listening to this later in the day via podcast or whatever, let us know what level 3 means for you and your families. You can send us an email at stories@bethlehem.org.nz. Of course, all our essential workers, we continue to keep going. We're incredibly proud of you. Please
so proud.
Feel that. But for those of you who are kicking in today with work, whatever, just let us know how it's all going. Michaela Gary says that it means coffee. Level 3.
Coffee, I
Wow.
know. Yeah.
Level 3, really?
Coffee.
Yeah.
Good.
It's very
Cameron
cool.
Shake
It means Macca's.
which is a convenient transition or pivot point, I guess, for the conversation.
Yes.
Because my question to Mon and Rob this morning, level 3 is essentially the same as level 4 in a lot of ways, but we now have takeaways. And so my question this morning is, what takeaways have you missed, and what are you going to get first? I also want to know in the comments who's already gone out to get Macca's or other
exactly.
Well.
Yeah, I want to know.
Like
Who's lining up?
But Mon, why don't you kick us off? What takeaways have you missed, and what are you going to get first?
Okay, I have really missed Tank juice. I love their smoothies, even better than the States. Like Tank is like pretty amazing. And their salads, love them. But I want to be really naughty, and I want a Big Mac.
Yeah, come on.
We do.
I dream in a salad, but I would kill for a hamburger.
You cracked me up.
That's hilarious.
Rob,
what about you?
Well, I'm looking forward to heading down to my main man down there at the House of Spice and getting me some garlic naan, some onion bhajis, tikka masala, super hot. Oh, hallelujah. And not having me. People say, "Oh, Rob, why can't you make that yourself?" It's so much nicer when someone else makes it for you, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I see Turkish there. Oh yeah, Turkish, a good doner kebab. Oh yeah.
Cameron Shakes is trying to say that his brothers went and lined up for the drive-thru at 3 a.m. this morning.
No way.
That is insane.
That's committed, man.
I want to know, Cameron, have they received the McDonald's yet, or are they still waiting? It's been 6 hours. Are they still waiting for the McDonald's?
Yeah, still waiting.
That is
impressive. About to end an hour, man. Come on. Hopefully they've got their food already.
I hope they took pictures. I want to see.
I hope they took pictures too. I'm probably the same as one. Like, Macca's is a guilty pleasure for myself, and so I'm missing the quarter pounder and the Big Mac.
Oh yeah.
But I think there's a few little local outfits I'm looking forward to coming back as well. Like we have the food market that used to happen every now and again just down the road from us, and so a lot of the local small businesses will be operating out of that. So there's a number of smaller businesses that I can't wait to be up and running to be able to get some food from them as well, and looking forward to see how they innovate in this level 3 climate. In particular, there's a mate of mine his name's Lex, and he does the most amazing burgers, and he's been doing level 4. He's been sharing recipes for sauces and styles of burgers and things like that.
Come on.
And just epic stuff. So I really want him to come back soon, because I missed out on having one of his burgers before we went into lockdown, and now it's all I've been able to think about for the last 4 weeks is that how much I want one of his burgers. His Instagram feed is not helping my thinking around this, but that's
we might have to have a staff meeting out where we get burgers.
I reckon.
I think so too. Yes. So I guess for us, in terms of people wondering for BBC, like, well, the staff is still working from home during this season. Hence why we're at home and not in some built studio at church that we put into commission during this whole time because we're so popular now. We're still working from home, which means we'll still be doing the show for the duration of level 3, as mentioned before. But Rob, Flavor Rob, why don't you hit us with your flavor on this fine Tuesday?
Now, I had to ask permission to share this recipe with you because it is probably the secret family favorite, and that is a chocolate raspberry pavlova. Okay.
No.
It's a kiwi. This is a recipe that only comes out on special occasions in the Stacey home and at our Christmas gathering. The chocolate raspberry pavlova. And if you've got kids that are listening in or watching at the moment, there's a bit of a science element to this today as well. So let me just share that with you to start off with. In this recipe, in all good, I guess, egg-based, but especially pavlova-based recipes, we have what we call the coagulation process. And that's where the protein called albumin in eggs is broken down, or what they call denature, and it's done through heat or acidity. And so we've got both of those things at play in a pavlova, okay? A little science experiment for at home if you want to with your kids. Get an egg and put it inside a glass with white vinegar, and then you get, it basically dissolves the shell, but the egg's still there. It's freaky. It looks like some sort of alien thing. Kids will love it, so get amongst it. Anyway, 6 egg whites, okay? You want to beat those egg whites until they are starting to form peaks. Then you start putting in your sugar, about 300 grams of caster sugar, not regular sugar. Caster sugar is much thinner, and it'll start to dissolve into that. You want to put in 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. You want to sieve that in whilst it's still beating. Okay, and then we're going to have 1 teaspoon of balsamic vinegar. Okay, the vinegar is going to help the scientific process of creating the pavlova. And then you want about 50, or if you're in our family, 100 grams of chocolate, dark chocolate.
Come on.
You can grate that in there, okay, whilst it's whipping, or you can fold it in at the end and you have little chunks. And then at the bottom of your beautiful pavlova, as it's cooking, you get this chewy, gooey, and you take it. Oh Lord, I can't even talk about it.
This is awesome.
You want to heat your gas oven or whatever it is up to 180, and then you actually want to cook it at 150. Okay, so you've mixed this in, you've folded it, you keep whipping it until it's all together, and then you dump it on top of a piece of baking paper, or they call it parchment in America or England. You sit that in your oven, and it sits there for an hour and a quarter. And it cooks at 150. And then you want to just, at the end of it, you want to just open the door, and the edges will be all crispy and the top's all puffy. Okay, it might sink a little bit. Who cares? It's chocolate. Okay, you want to whip a bit of cream and some raspberries. Fresh raspberries are the best, but if you can get some frozen raspberries, just drain off a little bit of that excess, and you sprinkle that on top, a bit of grated chocolate on top. You are going to love that to bits. All right. So that is the chocolate pavlova that just makes your mouth water. It'll be crispy along the bottom and a bit gooey and chewy, and then crunchy on top with a bit of fluffiness in the middle. Oh, hallelujah.
That's amazing.
That sounds amazing.
Get that in your life.
Dude, that would be a great raffle prize. Dinner with Flavor Rob. With the 3-course,
the Trinity of meals. The Trinity
of meals.
I can tell you'd be better off having dinner with Graham Randall. That man can cook. So, come
on, Graham. Come on.
Man, but Rob, that is incredible. So, thank you, Flavor Rob. Or should I say Science Rob this morning, because you had a bit of a both double dynamic kind of going on. If you want any of Rob's recipes, he's happy to hook you up with them. You just have to fire us a message to stories@bethlehem.org.nz. And then we'll connect to the dots, and you'll be able to get that sweet, delicious recipe, so you can start cooking it up at home. But if you've got any stories from the weekend or what's going on in your life at the moment, we want to hear them. We want to see your TikToks. We want to see your pictures. All these things. Fire them through to stories@bethlehem.org.nz. We've had a bit of a TikTok. There's been like none come through for the last little bit. So, you guys
have a challenge to all of us. Yeah.
You've just had a long weekend. I mean, I expected to see maybe 4 or 5 this morning. Still waiting on one from Stu Phelps. Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Come on, Stu.
So that's whatever. But fire through your stories to stories@bethlehem.org.nz. You can also tag the church in any of your social media posts and things @BethBapChurch. Instagram, Facebook. You can tag us in that. Great to be tagged and stuff like that. If you need help at any point during this time, I know we're transitioning to level 3, things are a little bit more relaxed, but there's still pressure there. Here at bethlehem.org.nz, or give the church a call on the phone number that you see on the screen as well. If you're needing stuff for your kids to complement the schooling and stuff like they're doing, like Blelo TV is doing a bunch of stuff, as well as Kiwi Kids News as well. So some great options there. And finally, this one, if you have any prayer requests during this time, you can fire those through using the keyword BBC Prayer to 4040. We also have a button on the church website that you can click, which will take you through to a place where you can type in your prayer request as well. But love to pray for you, love to care for you, love to hear from you. That's a little thing. Let's keep things going. Let's keep things bumbling along. If you miss a live thing, and I saw Hannah was saying that she goes back to work tomorrow, so today's the last day she gets to watch live. Never fear. Once we're done here in the morning, we take the audio from the show and we put it out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And so if you search Mornings Together on Apple or on Spotify, you're going to find the podcast. All the previous episodes are there. You can go back and listen to all of them. You can listen to Charles from last week, listen to Craig from 2 weeks ago. It's all there. So
it's all there. But we're going to miss you, Henny.
We're going to miss you, but you will be able to still stay connected and you can respond and stuff. But a warm welcome to those who are listening on the podcast and things. Great to have you. Thank you for listening. Also to those watching on YouTube and Facebook and on the church website. Great to have you with us today. You're watching Mornings Together with Rob, Mon, and Bernie. And Rob, I think it's about time we introduce our guest for the day.
Yay!
Absolutely. Well, it's great to have someone who went through college with me, a good friend of mine, Captain David Julian, who is a Padre in the New Zealand Army. So let's give him a warm welcome. Dave Julian, great to have you with us, bro.
Come on.
Yay! Welcome. Good morning.
I know it's a bit lame only having two of us clap, but the nation clapped with you as you
exactly. Yeah. And we thank you for your service.
Rapturous applause.
Yes.
Thank you.
David, it's so good to have you on the show this morning. Like I said at the top of the show, before we started even talking, going live and stuff, we had a great conversation with you. I'm really excited about this interview or what you're going to share today. I felt it was hugely fascinating, our little chat. But why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your bubble, and a little bit about your journey into becoming a Padre?
Yep. So I'm a chaplain in the Army. It's pretty obviously uniform. There's a bit of a giveaway. I like to tell people that it's not really good camouflage in an urban kind of non-military setting because you really do stand out. But it's actually not bad in the bush. You do blend in. So we live in Christchurch. So the Army camp is in Burnham, which is about 25 minutes out of Christchurch, south. And we live in Rolleston, which is about 10 minutes from the Army camp and about 10 minutes from Christchurch. Nice little place. We live here. My wife and 3 of our 4 kids live here. So one's at uni and is at home studying, and the other 2 are still at high school. And we'll be down here for at least another 2 years to get our youngest through school. And then I said to the military, because they move us around every 2 to 4 years, I said, if you let me get the kids through school, then you can send me anywhere and I'll be happy as.
Yeah.
So that'll be pretty cool. And so as far as family goes, we're all introverts. So we're actually doing really well in the lockdown because apart from not being able to get McDonald's, it really has had limited impact on us. So my wife and I are both essential services workers. My wife's a nurse, so she does district nursing in the local area. So we're still working, and so my bubble at home is pretty tidy. My bubble at work is actually quite large because there's 1,000 people that work at the camp, and I'm working with about 100 of them at the moment because we're in the military. Half of our people are working from home and the other half are actually active, still doing their jobs because we have to be available for overseas things and also support to civil defence. So we've got a percentage of our people actually working in the South Island with the civil defence and police doing background work for them. And we've got 400 people who are available in the camp at the moment, ready to go if something is required.
Wow.
So I'm working with a task group with the headquarters group that are running things and doing all the planning, logistics, and just preparing for potential things that could happen. But thankfully, we haven't been tasked to a large extent because we haven't been needed. The police and everybody else are doing a great job, and we're just available if we're needed.
Awesome. You mentioned before that we started the show that you've been a chaplain for 3 years, and there's quite a significant story that led you into becoming a Padre. If you could share that with us, that'd be great.
Sure. So we were talking earlier about why I became a chaplain. And so I was a Baptist pastor in Gore. I was there for 4 years. And during my time there was a Baptist leadership conference in Christchurch, funnily enough. And I went to that. There's quite a number of Baptist pastors there and elders and people who are interested. Really good conference. And at that conference, Rewa Te Kahu, one of our more well-known Baptist chaplains, spoke at the conference. And he just shared a really powerful and deep story about his time overseas on deployment with soldiers, where several soldiers died. And he was part of the process of bringing them back home. And so he's on the tarmac while the plane's being loaded with caskets. And because it's a military context, things don't stop when these things happen. So the soldiers that worked with the soldiers who died still had to work. They had to head on out. So while their friends were being loaded on a plane, they had to head on out and do patrols. So they're gathered there on the side of the airfield, and Rewi's standing in the middle of the tarmac as the bodies go up onto the plane. And so one at a time, the soldiers came out to him and had a chat, and he gave them a hug, and he cried for them because they weren't in a place to do that. They needed to move on. And so he stood there holding them one at a time with tears running down his face because he could do that for them. So for me, sitting there, it felt like God had reached inside me and pulled out all of my internal organs and just was holding them. And it was just such an overwhelming sense of that's what I need to be doing. That's what I should be doing, is supporting our soldiers who do a really difficult and challenging job and often really awful circumstances. And so I spent the next couple of years sorting things out to get all the things I needed to do to be able to join up.
It's huge, man. That's
so amazing. That's so powerful.
Story. It's when you're sharing, it's like you feel that in your gut as well, and as you listen to that story. So thank you for that. Now, part of your training in the past, you had the unfortunate occurrence of having to train alongside my co-host Rob Stacey, and so we asked Charles Hewlett last week. We didn't get anything out of Charles in terms of dirt on Rob. And that's so the listeners, the nation, they want to know, what's the dirt on Rob?
Come on.
Can you give us any dirt on Rob?
Well, probably the thing that you guys will find most horrifying was there was a rumor going around Carey when I was there and Rob was there that he was dealing drugs. And so you would naturally be really like, what? And Rob's sitting there going, man, what the heck? And so it turns out that it was actually true. So he was dealing in coffee and baked goods. And he would get addicted, people addicted slowly. He'd offer them the first coffee for free, the first muffin for free, and he'd slowly work his way into their hearts. And then all of a sudden that's going to be $5. And you're thinking, that's really expensive. But it's really convenient because you're here in the library, and it's like, No, he didn't charge. He's a good dude.
Rob, I love it. Feeding the addiction, man. Coffee and muffins.
Right, good. Had to. It was all for the student association, Dave. You know that. It was
That's right.
He did an amazing job drawing people together. It was cool. We had a great time there.
That's so good.
Thank you so much for sharing that, David. That is great.
And then every time I went past Dave, although he had a pile of assignments much higher than mine, he was still very much gaming on his computer there in the library. It was an inspiration to me how to just get away from things for a little bit and then come back to the study. So
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. So good.
That's very cool.
I guess to pivot the conversation back to something slightly more serious. So talk us through your role as in the Army as a full-time chaplain. A lot of people probably think, when they think chaplain, they think maybe Hacksaw Ridge, Andrew Garfield from that, maybe. So what has changed most of your role during lockdown, and what have been some of the more challenging needs during this time as well?
So what we would typically do with soldiers is we're there for their welfare. So we would be checking in on them. Probably one of the big changes for us is just the lower tempo on physical contact. A lot of our job is actually going into people's workplaces and being around them and talking to them and being in their space, really, and getting a sense for what's going on. It's really interesting when you can walk into a workplace and you know them so well, you can tell something's not right by the way that they're looking and speaking and interacting with each other. So that's one of our jobs. we do chapel services, we do relationship counselling, we do a whole lot of different things. And so that's been the biggest change, is not having that ability to actually be with people. So that's been my personal struggle. That's the hardest thing. But in saying that, I'm in a really privileged position where there's probably about 50 people within the camp that, because of the roles that they're in and the role that I'm in, I've still been interacting with them within the 2 meter distancing sort of rules, simply because we're still having to work. But also there's lots of things we're still having to do. So there's still relationship problems that people have. There's still frustrations in workplaces. All those sorts of things are still happening. We had a soldier die in the camp last week, which in the housing area, which had obviously a massive impact on his partner and the neighbours, and because the military is such a tight-knit community, it had an impact, I would say, fairly directly on at least 200 people who are working, and are still having to do their day job, but also process this, especially when we can't have a funeral. Military funerals are a really big deal and a really important part of us grieving, and we can't do that. So having to pick up that stuff has been really interesting.
So hard, even around the country where that has happened. And the 19, I think at this stage, that have passed away, that they can't be grieved for in that way.
So in your role, you're working with troops who face significant stress and are often pulled away from their families for significant periods of time at the drop of a hat. Rob was sharing a story before the show started about a guy who got a 35-minute heads up and then was off for 2 months, and that was basically the amount of. So what would be? And also, I want to make a comment that you've been a chaplain for 3 years, and there've probably been 3 of the most unusual years we've had as a country, and probably to be in your role and working with the military has been really. Had a whole lot of dynamic to it. For us, for the common person who's at home, who's we've just done 4 weeks of lockdown, but we're still in weird situations where we have to be apart from each other. There's that dynamic of isolation that brings stress. What are some of the things you say to your soldiers and to the families that you work with to help deal with and cope with those different dynamics of isolation and this just pressure and stress that come along with the role?
So the funny thing for us is this isn't uncommon for us. I've been doing briefings each week with soldiers who are preparing for tasks and things like that. And one of the things I point out to them is we do this all the time. We're often under constraints. I went on a 30-day exercise, a military exercise in the South Island a couple of years ago, and I worked 30 days in a row with no breaks, and it was 20-hour days sort of things. And there were significant constraints on my movements, so I couldn't go and do what I wanted. I had to do what everybody else was doing, to the point where we were having showers every 3 days, because that's how the military operates, which is really, really bad for your hygiene, but never mind, that's just how it is. And so for us, it's not as difficult because our people are under orders. So we can go to a soldier and say, tomorrow you're going overseas, and that's just what it is. And so they have to pack their gear and go. It's not a discussion, it's just how it is. So the discussions I'm having with people is around, well, when we're interacting with civilians who aren't used to this, you can expect all sorts of issues that they might respond with. Not because they're bad people, but because they're having to deal with something that's outside their experience. But even for our guys, I've been talking through things like do the things you normally do within the constraints we've got. So sleep patterns, eating, exercise, listening to music, do all the things that you would normally do to look after yourself. Because most of those we can still do.
Yeah.
And, the fact that you can't have McDonald's and some of these other things is not a bad thing. It's probably for some of us is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, there's actually lots of things. But for our guys, it's different. Yeah.
Wow.
So it is fascinating because it is a different situation, I guess, for them. But how do do you do a lot of work with the families attached to soldiers and stuff as well?
We do, within certain limits. So I've had partners ringing and talking to me, and I've been doing micro counselling with them around how they can utilise some of the training packages and some of the resources we have in the military to help. And reminding their military partner that they know these things and they can actually coach their partner through. And so we have access to a whole lot of resourcing around counselling and things like that we can provide as well. The military has got some really good staff to help our people out, and that also flows over in most circumstances to families.
Awesome.
We're keeping people in touch with online resourcing. We've got organisational psychologists and social workers that work for us. So they've been putting together resources for families in our housing area to link into. They're running fun competitions for the kids and the families in the housing area, and going around and taking photos of letter boxes that are kind of all done up for certain themes, and then running competitions and prizes. They're doing some really cool things to help people out.
That's awesome.
So good.
So this week we talked before that this weekend we just had our Anzac weekend. We had Anzac Day on Saturday, and we weren't able to do our normal duties or normal way of celebrating Anzac Day. We talked about it just before about people were standing at the end of their driveways. People made their own poppies in homes, stuff like. What was it like for you guys? What was it like for one of the first times not to be able to gather in the normal way we would for Anzac?
Yeah, it's a really weird one for us because it's such a big part of what we do. So in the camp, they ran a service as such through the loudspeaker system in the camp. So it was fully automated, so there weren't people involved. So that went through the camp. All of the soldiers who live in the camp went outside of the spaces that they live in, just like everybody at home would have done at the end of their driveway. In the housing area, it was very similar. There were lots of photos on Facebook on a army kind of Facebook page of people having done silhouettes in their windows, and so lots of photos. Here at home, I dressed in my uniform, went outside, played the Radio New Zealand broadcast through a speaker outside really loud, and woke up a couple of our neighbours who didn't come out, but that's okay. And then had a really weird experience with the neighbours across the road who we don't know that well, who all came out and was stood directly opposite me while I'm standing there at attention, saluting through the national anthem and other things. And they were just staring at me. And so that was really interesting because at the end of that, they were really appreciative of the military, and just the fact they got out in their pajamas at 6 o'clock in the morning was quite cool to see. But I felt awkward having them watch me because, it was a lot more, I guess, intimate than the normal services that I've been part of, because typically I'll be emceeing or have an actual role, but I'm only one of hundreds of people, whereas this was quite a lot more personal. It was really interesting.
Wow.
And I imagine that was the same for a lot of people across the country, because it's interesting. It's changing from a ceremony of a few hundred people to being almost an isolated. This is my personal response to Anzac Day in a lot of ways. Well, Dave, thank you so much for sharing with us today. We're going to begin to wrap up today's show. I want to talk a little bit about tomorrow, but I actually want to invite Monica to talk a little about tomorrow because we have a friend of hers who's going to be coming on the show tomorrow morning. So, Mon, why don't you tell us a little bit about tomorrow's guest before we wrap up today?
Tomorrow we have Nigel Gregory. Nigel and Helen Gregory own Brookfield Pharmacy. in Bethlehem, and they are part of our Bethlehem Baptist community. They are incredible people who, like David, have worked straight through. They've been essential workers. And we're going to hear about them on the front lines of pharmacy in our patch of the woods. And just they're incredible people. And my daughter worked for Nigel and Helen and said that they are incredible, not only pharmacists, they're real into the community and they go above and beyond. And so I can't wait to hear from Nigel tomorrow.
It's going to be good.
Great.
Cool. So make sure you tune in again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock on Facebook, the church website, and on YouTube. But David, we've got a tradition on the show where we invite our guests to pray for everyone as we close out our time together. I'd invite you to do that now for us, please.
Cool. Awesome. Lord, we just want to thank you for this time together, the opportunity to be together in a way that's different from how we normally would, but it's still sharing and being part of a community. Lord, I just thank you so much that you are able to bring people like Rob and Monica and Bernie and the rest of the team of Bethlehem to support people in this difficult time, to be able to just help us stumble along in our faith. It can be so difficult in normal times, and things aren't normal. It's a great privilege to be part of your people. And Lord, I just pray that all of those people who listen just have a greater sense of who you are in their lives, and that they feel really connected to you and your people in Bethlehem, and Tauranga, and maybe even wider than that. I know from personal experience on Sundays, tuning into our church and other churches, it gives you a greater sense of belonging. And we all have that strong desire to belong, Lord. So I just pray that you would grow that in us and continue to bless us as we move from level 4 to level 3, and what that might mean for us, with the greatest hope that things will return to a new normal, and hopefully we can draw some of the strengths of what we've learned and gained through these times and take that with us, rather than just revert back to old habits, which maybe haven't always been that good for us. So Lord, we just thank you that you haven't abandoned us, that you are always there for us. In your name, Jesus, amen.
Amen. Thank you, David.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Bless you guys.
And thank you for everybody for tuning in today. It's great to have you with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Remember, you can go back and listen to this on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well if you want to. But that's it for us today. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Catch ya.
Yeah.